This is By Your Side, the podcast that cuts through the noise of new parenthood. No cliches, no guilt trips, just the real story. Practical tools and insights that actually help. I'm Katie, and I'm here to make sure you don't do this alone. In this episode, I speak to Lucy Nicholson, a midwife with over 15 years of experience. That made me really think about the pressure all new parents feel to be perfect, to know what they're doing, and that they should be getting it right. I love her openness and honesty about her own experience, where she shares that even though she is the expert, she had worries and fears about pregnancy and parenthood too. Before we dive in, just a quick moment to say, if this episode speaks to you, please hit follow, leave a review, or send it to someone you know who's in the thick of it too. That's how we reach more new parents who need a little reminder that they're not doing it wrong. It's just hard. And don't forget, conversation continues in the podcast lounge on the By Your Side app. That's where you can share your thoughts, ask questions, and help shape what we talk about next. All right, let's get into it. Hi, Lucy. It's so lovely to have you on this week.
Hi, Katie. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to do this for you.
I'm desperate to dive in. So, telling you, why did you qualify, or what called you to being a midwife? What was it that attracted you to that job?
To be honest, I don't really know. I said it from a really young age that I wanted to be a midwife. And I don't really know if I really knew sort of the ins and outs of midwifery, probably not at the age that I was. And then went through school thinking, yeah, I'll be a midwife. And then when it gets to the point where you have to choose what you want to do in terms of subjects or applications and things, had a bit of a wobble and was like, I've said this for years. Do I actually want to do this? Or do I want to be a teacher or something else? And I just kind of thought I wanted to do it for so long, or I've thought I've wanted to do it for so long. I'm going to give it a go. That's the only way I'll find out if it's for me. And honestly, it's the best thing I've done. Like, genuinely cannot imagine doing any other job. It's amazing. I'm so privileged to be part of so many women's lives.
Oh, that's fantastic, because it's so often that, as kids, and I can speak from experience, that you think, oh, I think that's what I want to do, but to actually do it and go through it. And I'm guessing it's not just all easy sailing. Not every pregnancy is easy. Not every birth is easy. You know, have there been times where you've just thought, actually, this is a real challenge, or is it just that still that privilege of being part of a parent's journey?
Yeah, I mean, it's always a privilege, whatever the situation, to be a part of someone's journey, because it's such a special time in people's lives, brings with it such emotion and vulnerability and fear for a lot of women. And, you know, obviously not every outcome's a positive or unexpected, you know, not necessarily not a positive experience, but unexpected sometimes. And sort of managing expectations, protecting women, advocating, empowering, like it's all a part of it. Yeah, I think it's just a massive, I think nobody really understands. I'm sure it's like any job, you know, nobody really understands the enormity of a job, or actually the job role itself, until you're in it and you're doing it and you're seeing and meeting these people. I think there's lots of factors that change lots of things for people. So something that somebody finds completely normal, other people find completely, you know, scary, unexpected, you know, all that kind of thing. So it's been such a privilege to just stand by these women and adapt to them as an individual and support them in the ways that they need, really.
Oh, that's so beautiful, and so normalizing of actually it's okay to find that something's doesn't feel right for you, and somebody else might find that that's okay for them. But if it's not for you, knowing that your midwife is there to hold your hand and advocate for you and to understand is just huge. And I suppose if someone's finding with their healthcare professional that they're not feeling held and supported in the way that you obviously do with the women that you work with, what are their options? Do they have options, or do you have to just stick with the healthcare professional, the midwife that you've been assigned?
I think that's a really important question, actually, because we're always going to meet people in life that are either on our wavelength or not. And I think it's really important to know that you do have a choice. You know, talking from sort of my trust, you know, I would just encourage you to get hold of part of management, and just express your concerns or worries or feelings about your caregiver, because there's absolutely always another option of sort of transferring the care. It might mean you have to travel a little further to appointments or to a different place, but actually, if that's going to make a difference to your journey, sort of to motherhood and parenthood, then I absolutely recommend that you do it. You don't have to stick with somebody if you don't feel supported in your journey.
Oh, that's so powerful and so empowering, which is obviously kind of what you love about what you do. Now, I'm going to be a bit not cheeky, but I'm going to dig a little bit. So, having qualified as a midwife, you obviously then went on to become a parent yourself.
Yeah.
Was there anything, I suppose, did you just feel just really prepared and it all went and you knew what you were doing? Or was there anything that threw up for you that caused maybe a shift in how you viewed your work or pregnancy or birth?
I think that's a really interesting one because I know the physiology and anatomy of it all. I've supported hundreds of women through the same journey. But I guess the thing that you don't know is how you're going to feel about everything or how you're going to cope or, your own transition to parenthood as a whole. You don't know how your birth's going to go. Just having the knowledge doesn't gain you entry to an amazing magical birth or experience, and I've seen time and time again, often just personal perception of experience. So, we have women that have, textbook, if you'd like, births, but actually come away with a lot of birth trauma from that. Or you see women who've ended up with an emergency cesarean that are cool about it, and it's that thing of like, I can't predict how I'm going to feel about any part of this journey. There's lots of emotion that goes with it as well. I think the biggest thing that I would say during pregnancy that I felt that I was unprepared for was the sense of responsibility for growing this baby that was going to change lots of people's lives. First grandbaby for my parents, my in-laws, they've got 2 grandchildren that live out in New Zealand. So first grandchild that kind of they would be around a lot. And obviously my husband's life. So I think I felt this real responsibility, knowing that actually everything that I was doing was, in favor of supporting a nice, healthy pregnancy. But that fear of what if something happens, and I know that it, rationally, that it wouldn't necessarily be anything that I'd done or my fault, but bearing that responsibility of growing this baby and getting it out safely to then present it to everybody that was kind of waiting for this baby to arrive. And nobody ever said that to me, either sort of friend or patient or anything, that actually that sense of responsibility feels massive.
That's really huge, Lucy, isn't it? Because it's you kind of saying that's all on me. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that echoes through parenthood for so many parents,
Yeah.
particularly women, but not exclusively. About actually, this is my responsibility. It's on me. Yet, as you said, you were doing everything that you knew textbook that you needed to do in order to have a
Yeah.
healthy pregnancy. Yet everybody's expectations were on you, and that's really interesting that you say you can see that almost separate, and you can see that, and you can reflect back on that. But actually, at the time, that was still going through your mind, and that kind of level of pressure in a way is
Yeah.
significant
And
from somebody who knows the internet.
absolutely. And I would 100% have had, support from any of those people if anything, in our journey had, changed or been unexpected. And, there was no fear that I wouldn't be supported in those things, but it was just yeah, the personal pressure of almost, I've got to get this right. And people are waiting for this baby. And never sort of physically knew what was going to happen, prepared for the journey. But the internal turmoil of, I hope everything is going to be okay and, progress as expected.
So so that insight obviously is huge. As you said, kind of the anatomy, the physiology, you've kind of got that down, delivered lots of babies, lots of different scenarios and lots of different journeys. So what would you say kind of after, and particularly after those first 18 months? So having gone through pregnancy, delivered, and the first 18 months, has it changed how you view or how you approach your work or your kind of relationship with other women?
Yeah, I don't, it's such a profound thing that I don't think that you could go through that and not change. You've got empathy rather than sympathy now because you've done it and you've been through those difficult nights and, those early mornings, doing it second time around, having a toddler then. He was just less than 2 when I had my second, so then juggling two, it's huge, isn't it? And I think the main things I'd say to any mum is I think you're doing better than you think you're doing. Half the time we're really hard on ourselves, aren't we? And you're trying to live up to expectation and social media and friends. The beast of comparison rears its head, doesn't it? As soon as
Yeah.
you have a baby, um, you know, worrying about if your baby's doing what they should be doing, meeting those milestones, feeding and sleeping when they should be. And it's all in quotation marks, isn't it? Because every baby's different and every journey's different.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so empowering to hear, Lucy, because, it's the element of you are the professional in this arena, and to
Mhm.
know that you go through what I'd say 100%. I'm happy for somebody to come back at me to go, no, I've been fine. And I knew that I never worried once. But just to hear that normalizing that sense of comparison and that worry or that feeling isolated in that you think that you might be doing something different rather than actually this is what everybody goes through and these are the thought process that everybody goes through is just so incredibly empowering.
Yeah. I think another massive thing is it's all right to change your mind about things. Pre-pregnancy, you have all these, you've probably seen friends and family parent, you've probably seen things on social media or the TV. I've seen firsthand with families that I look after. You kind of build this little image of this is kind of how I'm going to do things. And actually, it's okay to change your mind when your baby arrives, feeding, sleeping, routines, when you return to work. Everything's flexible. And actually, what works for somebody may not work for you and your baby and your family for whatever reason. And actually, just because you've said it, it doesn't mean you have to stick with it. And you just have to find your own way to survive when you're in it.
Yeah. Oh, that's so helpful rather than feeling I must do it
Mhm.
this way. That can change over the lifetime of your family as your family grows, or just because actually it's not working for you. It's
Mhm.
just helpful. You can choose and you can change, and that's not a reflection on you. It's you growing with your baby and your family.
Yeah, definitely.
Now I'm going to delve into questions because it's such, as you've said, such a huge change. It's a huge change mentally. It's a huge change physically in terms of relationship with others. And I know that not everybody feels really comfortable in asking kind of those questions that they might think sound a bit out there or weird. What's the weirdest question do you think that you've had? Or maybe
Um,
personal question?
I think I think the question that threw me off the most, well, the phone call that threw me off the most was when a dad called in the middle of the night, worried about his baby. And when I answered the phone, he said, "My baby's got eggs in her legs."
Right.
And I was like, "Sorry, could you repeat that, please?" And he just said, "I think my baby's got eggs in her legs." And I, yeah, just absolutely floored me because I didn't really know how to respond. And I just said, "Can you describe what you're seeing?" And I think in the end we deduced that maybe got a bit of a rash that was a bit
Right.
bumpy.
Oh, okay.
But the way he described it, yeah, completely threw me off course really. But, you know, if you're ever worried about your little one, it's really good to call. Don't ever feel silly. This person that called was never made to feel silly from the way that he was describing things. He was obviously panicking about his little one, and he did the right thing by calling to get some advice. And we got that baby seen, and she was absolutely fine. But I think again, that's such an important thing when you're panicking, and you almost don't know how to word things or how to ask something. just let it out. We'll always get to the bottom of things without judgment, and we'll always offer reassurance and, second opinions, or, seeing your little one if we need to. I think, like we've just said, every baby's different, aren't they? So, they don't come out with a textbook to tell you exactly what's going on with them. So yeah, we'd much rather you call. But yeah, I think that's the probably the strangest question I've had about a baby, that I think he was just a bit flustered and didn't really know how to sort of describe things to us.
Yeah, but that worries. It's really interesting, isn't it? I know there's been more scientific study into that neural change, so the brain change within parents of worrying. And I know that a friend of mine has recently had a baby, and she's kind of checking the buggy all the time, to make sure the brakes are on if it's anywhere. She said, "Oh gosh, I just think the worst case scenario so much now." And she's a very laid back, very bubbly lady. Yet this is something that's obviously quite new to her. But I think they've shown now through scientific studies of the brain change that actually that's what happens. You are more prone, you adapt to make those kind of that sense checking and safety checking for your child. It's really normal and natural evolutionary progression, really.
Yeah, and we've always, at the time where women and families are speaking to midwives, your baby's probably less than 2 weeks old. So a lot's changed in that 2 weeks. You're probably knee deep in sleep deprivation and, change and worry and, feeding and, is this nappy normal? Like, everything goes through your head, doesn't it? And it's 24 hours a day, especially those first, few weeks or months. You see in most hours of the day, so actually it's really hard to be articulate, isn't it, when you're absolutely shattered and you've got lots going on.
Absolutely. And it's about that relationship. So I suppose it kind of interlinks with lots of what we said about having that relationship with your healthcare professional. Your midwife is really important. And if it's not right, then you can ask to change, because actually that's the person, no matter what, no matter how worried, or if you feel you can't articulate properly, it's worth checking and sense checking and making sure that you can put your mind at rest. But that sense of it is exhausting, and that's
Yeah,
normal.
absolutely.
Let's call it what it is. Lucy, let's call it out. It's just shattering those first few weeks and months. And what's lovely is you're saying actually you will see many hours. You won't have this routine. I think we had a lovely interview with Helen Bell around sleep, who talks about that sense of that's normal and that's natural. It's not to be expected that your baby should be in a sleep for a certain amount of hours from the very get-go. It's about finding your way together as you progress and grow together.
Yeah, definitely.
Have you seen, I know you kind of talked about Instagram and other social medias and that expectation. Have you seen a change over the last 15 years of expectations of parents of what things should or could be like? Or has it been kind of fairly consistent?
I think it's kind of been glamorized now. Not that being a parent isn't glamorous, of course. I'm sure
Really?
you
You had a very different experience to me.
always got sick on your shoulder and things like that.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
but yeah, I think it has changed. I think there's a lot more out there now. I think that's where people are getting their information from. I think, Dr. Google is still around, isn't it? And I think people are generally seeking more support, reassurance, insight into things like parenting and what's normal and what isn't from social media. I don't necessarily think it's all bad at all. I think we've got some really positive sort of influences out there in terms of parenting. I think there's lots of good information. I think where it gets difficult is the conflicting information. That's what a lot of feedback is for, in terms of women looking at things that are sort of do's and don'ts of breastfeeding, for example.
Yeah.
You can get told 10 different things by 10 different people and actually none of it align, and then it's really hard to focus your energy onto something, isn't it, because you don't know what's right and what isn't. And actually half the time it's not being about right or wrong, it's about being what works for you and your baby. I think the biggest thing is you know your baby best. Nobody else is going to know your baby like you. So, being having that flexibility that we were talking about earlier, I think gaining ideas and inspiration and things from people is good. If you're struggling with something and think, well, actually, I haven't tried that and it's worth a go, and that may be the little nugget of gold that you were looking for that actually, changes or improves the situation in terms of sort of early motherhood or parenting.
Yeah.
But yes, definitely changed, I'd say. But I don't think it's all for the bad. I think the thing that is probably the hardest part of social media is almost you're seeing a snapshot of people's lives, aren't you? And you're not always seeing that behind the scenes, that bad day, the tears, the anxiety, the not coping fear. We're seeing the snapshots of the easy bits of their day or the nice bits, or it's well edited. I think it's knowing that realistically their whole day from, I don't know, 5, 6 a.m. until bedtime's, probably not been as smooth sailing as it appears.
Absolutely. So it's that, take the bit that works for you. I would say from what you've just said, it's about finding your own way and you knowing your baby best. When I was a while ago, but obviously when I was pregnant, I remember having a taxi journey and the taxi driver telling me, actually, everybody's going to give you information. Everybody you meet will give you a piece of advice. And he said, with all sincerity, take all of that advice and forget it. Just
Yeah.
do your own thing, find your own way. And that actually turned out to be one of the wisest things from a random taxi driver that I heard about. It's that trust in yourself and finding your way. But as you said,
Yeah.
and finding those little nuggets that might work for you.
Yeah.
Really.
And also, every baby's different. So you could have 10 babies and probably what works for the first one might not work for baby 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah.
It's that thing of just being adaptable. And, I'm sure you can resonate with this. Like, you one day you think you've absolutely cracked something, and then a day later it's all reversed and that thing doesn't work anymore and you have to find something new.
Yeah.
So it's just there's no consistency, is there? It's just about adaptability and being a bit like, today was a good day, we'll take that, see what tomorrow brings, and we'll deal with whatever tomorrow brings.
Yeah. Oh, that's fabulous.
Celebrate the little wins, I think, is really important with
Yeah,
parenting.
the little wins and charting those in some way, I think, is a really good way of kind of remember, actually, we did have a win yesterday. Or today's, yeah. Or I'd love for you to speak about nesting Lotus a little bit more, because this is how I came across you and your work. And I think that approach to how you support women is just so empowering.
Oh, thank you. So, Nesting Lotus was born on my second maternity leave. I tried on my first maternity leave to do my prenatal training, but then COVID hit, so that all got cancelled, along with most things in life. And then by the time it all reopened again, I was either pregnant or thinking about having another one. So I think my youngest was about 10 months old when I went on my training up in Leeds, took my dad with me to look after the baby while I did my training, my prenatal training. And it started from there. So I wanted to give women an alternative to land-based exercise in pregnancy. I think the benefits of being in water is incredible. That sort of weightlessness, especially as your bump grows, low impact. And actually, speaking from personal experience, I'm not a gym girl. Like, I don't mind do it, but it's not my favourite. Offer me a swimming pool instead, and I'm straight in. So part of it was wanting to offer women a choice about sort of exercise and activity, especially for those women where it might not be as easy to engage with things like that. People that particularly suffering with things like SPD or pelvic girdle pain, raised BMI, for example, anything, or even just land-based exercise isn't for me. That's fine. But yeah, it was kind of born from a want to do some water-based activity with pregnant women. But what it's given me is something much, much bigger than that. It's allowed me to create a huge community of women, getting them together in a local environment. The main theme is activity, of course, keeping nice and healthy in pregnancy, but that has a ripple effect to mental health and emotions and how you feel about pregnancy. But the biggest thing is about creating these communities of women. Within our classes, we have a protected space in our classes at the end every single time for women to introduce themselves. I mean, I went to a pregnancy yoga class when I had my first, which was amazing, loved it. And I was probably near the same women most weeks, but it got to the point where they probably told me their name, in weeks 1 or 2. And then by week 6, 7, I've forgotten what their names are. And actually it feels too awkward to ask again. So then it's really difficult to take that kind of friendship or acquaintance outside of a group. So a big part of Nesta Notice for me is kind of doing that awkward bit for you. So every week, everybody says the names, how many months pregnant or postnatal. You're welcome postnatally as well. And we just have a bit of a chat about our week. And sometimes it's nothing to do with pregnancy, but, acknowledging that things are going on outside of pregnancy as well, which can make a huge difference to your life and your journey to parenthood. And actually, it's astounding how many women can resonate and offer a little bit of advice, support. This worked for me. Have you tried this? I actually spoke to this person. I've got this, this magic cream to tell you about that helps with messages, or, whatever comes up in these conversations. And I think actually it's just about not feeling alone in your journey. We have WhatsApp groups for every venue as well, so they can connect us. So it's just giving women that space to come and actually connect with their bump and other people and other women, and acknowledging that actually everybody's journey is different, that there's so many similarities that run between people, and actually getting a little bit of me too in all of that, and getting some support. It doesn't, you don't have to come in and be happy and cheery every week. You can come in and have a bit of a cry if you need to, and we're there just to give you a big group hug.
Oh, that's so beautiful and so powerful, that sense of community. And I love the fact that you don't have to be into the gym to keep fit and healthy during that there are other ways of just connecting with your bump and kind of keep moving during pregnancy. So
I think it's a nice form of exercise to continue all the way through as well, because you've got that weightlessness. You can come literally until after your sort of due date, if you want to call it that, expected date that baby may be born around. You've got that consistency, with the sort of weightlessness and that activity right up until baby's born. As long as your water's not gone, you're welcome in. And I think it takes a bit of that sort of just sitting and waiting away, doesn't it? Because we all know we've been there, just kind of wondering when this baby's going to arrive.
Yes, absolutely. And that connection to just kind of air some of those concerns and worries is just incredibly important. My final question to you is, looking back now and through all of your experience and obviously all the women that you've nurtured and supported and your own experience, what advice would you give yourself at that point that you were expecting for the first time?
I think the biggest bit is remember that you're important as well. You're growing this baby, and often antenatal appointments and scans are focused around your little one and how they're growing. I think remember that you're in there too, and actually, look after yourself. Talk about you at antenatal appointments as well as kind of how baby's getting on. Be kind to yourself. Lots of things will change that are out of your control. All of it's normal. You're growing a baby and it's massive and it's amazing, so just look after yourself both in pregnancy and afterwards as well. Like we were saying earlier, don't compare. Everybody's journey is different and you're absolutely smashing it. Whatever your journey looks like, you're doing such a great job. It's an absolutely massive transition becoming a parent, whether that's first time or whether you're managing a tribe of 3 or 4, everything changes, doesn't it, when you have a new little one. So, on the days where you need a bit of a pajama and a Netflix day, take it, and other days where you feel like you can get out and get to a group or have a walk or some fresh air. Absolutely, just take it day by day. Reach out to people. You'd be surprised at how many people are in the same position or feeling the same or had a bad night. I think sometimes at 3 a.m. when you're sitting there and you've been up for the last 3 hours, you feel like you're the only person on the planet that's up, don't you?
Yeah.
So I think it's that thing of you're really not alone in any of this. There's lots of parents out there that have probably been at the same amount of time as you and feel exactly the same.
Oh, Lucy, that's amazing. I certainly won't be adding to my family anytime soon, but I wish you had been my midwife, because it's just so lovely to hear how passionate you are about supporting women on their journey and just how caring and holistic that you make that approach be. So thank you so much for joining us on By Your Side.
Oh, you're more than welcome. I've had a lovely morning. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. If this episode gave you something to think about, made you feel a little more human, or helped you feel a little less alone, it would mean so much if you could like, subscribe, or leave a quick review. It's a small thing that makes a big difference. And if you want to talk some more about what came up today or ask a question for a future guest, come hang out in the podcast lounge inside the By Your Side app. It's free to join and it's full of people who get it. Until next time, you've got this and we've got you right here by your side. Just a quick note before we finish. What you hear on this podcast is here to support you, not to replace professional advice. Everyone's situation is different, so if you're worried about your own well-being or your baby's, please speak to a qualified healthcare provider. You deserve support that's tailored to you.